Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. I have quite a raucous home this weekend, so if you hear other voices about little echoes here and there, do excuse me. I've brought the microphone a little bit closer to me so that I don't have to project so much and to try and cancel out some other sounds, but they're going to come through. And also, I don't want to boom too loudly because there's a little babby sleeping rather close to me at this very moment, which I'm trying to take advantage of. Anyway, also the lamp behind me, as you can see, keeps flickering on the screen. In real life, it doesn't flicker at all, but over the camera lens, for some reason, it's flickering away. Really annoying, but these are the kind of technical hitches we face. But let's kick off with some really happy news, because it was happy returns of the day for Princess Eugenie, Mrs. Jack Brooksbank, who is now 12th in the line of succession. She has been nudged out of place and down the line by the issue of Princess Beatrice, little baby Athena, who comes in at number 11. Eugenie shared a photograph looking very natural with her birthday besties, which I thought was quite sweet. And you might have missed it, but last month, or was it the month before? No, last month she shared a few Valentine images of her and her Valentine. Both she and Beatrice have found truly lovely men and well-matched beaux, haven't they, in Jackie and Edo. They make wonderful couples, and they're full of affection. And I'm going to sprinkle the beginning of this broadcast with some light-hearted stuff, and then towards the end of the broadcast, a couple of more weighty, meaty issues regarding Trump and the Commonwealth, a little bit of politics, and Keir Starmer. So just warning you that that's coming up, but a little bit of lightness for the moment. And something that really brought me some cheer was seeing Lisa Eldridge coming face to face with Big Willie and receiving her honour. She was honoured as part of the King's New Year's honours for her services to cosmetics and fashion. She becomes Lisa Eldridge MBE, and she was overjoyed to receive it from the Prince of Wales, and it was so well deserved. And I want to speak about Lisa Eldridge for a moment because, of course, she became a YouTube sensation. She's known here and in the States and is loved and has established such a strong and successful brand. You know, you talk about female founders, and we know who we're referring to there, and I hate to draw the comparison. Lisa would never be so vulgar to draw the comparison or approve of such bitchiness, but you know, when you're talking about female founders, you are talking about the likes of Lisa Eldridge MBE. You know, there is a proper gal and a true lady. She keeps it ladylike, doesn't she, and above board. She really does, and long before she was a YouTube sensation, she was a sensation of the fashion world. I remember hearing of her before her YouTube career took off. It was one of the first times that it might have been the first time that I was ever scouted by the assistant of the fashion photographer, Sean Ellis it was. And I can remember having a little tete-a-tete and a shoot at Metro Studios, or was it Spring Studios? Metro Studios, the makeup artists and the stylists, and they were the ones that were gossiping about Lisa, but only had lovely things to say, and her reputation preceded her then, as it does now. And she channels the royal spirit. You know, I talk about channeling the royal spirit. She is a girl that does that, and she's a Kiwi, or at least, as far as I'm aware, she was born in New Zealand, came through there, and then moved to Liverpool with her family. Raised around Liverpool, ended up in London, as you do. And she went on to become such a trusted brand ambassador of her own brand, you know, of cosmetics, and she deals in jewels and gems as well, doesn't she? Have you seen the lovely finger candy that she also sells? And I'll make a rare recommendation. I'm asked every single day which makeup brands I use, and I do cosset the information because I don't like to give free publicity to other brands, for one thing. Another reason is that what you see may not suit you when you buy, and you might be disappointed. And I happen to know that I have great influence, and people rush out and buy anything that passes through my lips. So I'm actually quite cautious about it, but I will tell you that Lisa Eldridge is one of a small handful of brands that I do use here on the broadcast. So I'm very happy to send business her way because of her, actually. One of the videos, the first videos I remember seeing of hers on YouTube, was her Princess Diana tutorial with Mary Greenwell, who used to do Diana's makeup along with, was it Sam McKnight did the hair and everything. Very interesting, wasn't it, at the time? Lots of you will have seen these videos because they were high hitters sort of back in the day on YouTube. And Lisa also has videos on vintage makeup. She loves all of that nostalgia, vintage makeup and cosmetics. She owns lots of pieces like the late Audrey Hepburn's lipstick remains, this kind of thing. And actually, I thought of her when I was looking through my mementos and souvenirs, my vintage ephemera. Just the other day, I came across this card, very delicate little card. I've got quite a lot like this one actually, but when I opened this up, it was in an envelope, and I opened it up as carefully as I possibly could. I'm afraid I couldn't open it intact, so I felt rather guilty, but there was no way to open it without breaking it. But inside was what appeared to be cosmetics. I mean, I don't know, what do you think about this? It was a collection of sort of dust. It didn't really smell of cosmetics, but to me, I thought, what else could it be? I don't think it was sand from the Holy Land or anything like that. I'm hoping it's not laced with it poison. I did panic for a moment and sprang up and washed my hands and fingers, but my feeling is that this was cosmetics or foundation that was being vouchsafed to someone decades ago, maybe over a century ago. But I thought it was rather charming, and probably something rather clandestine if this goes back to Edwardian or Victorian times, you know. But I continue to be bowled over by the girl's industriousness and her business savvy and her work ethic. She is ceaseless. She doesn't stop. No idea how she does it, my dear. What a truly wonderful ambassador for the kingdom and the Commonwealth, and I take my time to doff my tiara to you, Lisa Eldridge, MBE. And I have no doubt that you're heading for a damehood, my dear. Wonderful. And should we also mark the fact, was it yesterday, 22nd of March? I've lost track of the days, but I think it was yesterday that it was a year since that fateful moment when Catherine appeared in that striped top of hers sitting on a bench and told us all about her predicament. And her comeback, if you want to call it a comeback, rather vulgar, over the last year has been tentative, and she's taken her time, bit by bit. There have been more engagements to enjoy seeing her at, and a little bit more visibility. And there is still uncertainty and there's still fragility. But what a treat to have seen the family come through such a difficult year as we've been privy to, after several difficult years, it's got to be said, for different reasons that we all know about, and continue in their life of duty and service. Let's hope that Her Royal Highness is strong and well enough to embark on a royal tour or two in the coming months and year, and to sprinkle some more magic and sparkle. On the subject of sparkles, I've mentioned a friend of mine, Monica, who has a channel, Sparkle by Monica, and a shop more or less of the same name, based in the States, and I've mentioned the little trinkets that she creates and sends out, and she has sent out some pear earrings to a basketeer who brought some business to her, and I am giving my official stamp of approval to these earrings. If you'd like to go and take a look, there are disco pears, there are green pears, and there is a gold pear. And by the way, some of you made me laugh recently because I always refer to my golden pear, don't I, meaning the picture of my golden pear. Well, unusually for me, the innuendo went over my head until some of you brought it to my attention. What golden pear are you talking about, River? Will you? Well, I thought that was rather naughty. You know, I'm not David Beckham with his golden balls, and that was not the golden pear that I was referring to. If you will please excuse me, so I will have to henceforth rename it the Pear of Gold, so as not to confuse anybody. By the way, any Londoners out there, did you notice the storms yesterday? There was one clap of thunder and lightning that came through of the likes that I have never heard before in my life. I had the window open. I always have the window open, even in deepest, darkest, coldest winter, because I like to have fresh air circulating. I had the window open. I was sitting next to it. It was the loudest clap of thunder I'd ever heard in my life. I sprang to the window, and the lightning that came through, it seemed to come through the window and almost reach inside, and it filled the courtyard outside the window with light, to the point where for a couple of seconds I actually wondered if it was the storm or if it was nuclear war. Seriously, I've never heard or seen anything like it. The whole house shook. A little bit scary for a moment, but rather exhilarating as well, because I love a storm. I absolutely love a storm. I don't want to die in one, but that was quite something. And the other noise that came through this morning, actually, which was surprising, was church bells through the window. Now, there are some small churches and chapels surrounding me, but I've never heard them make any noise before. Maybe I just haven't been listening out, or perhaps because it was winter. But this morning, the sound of church bells came through the window while I was having breakfast. So nice. But moving on to slightly less frivolous issues now, my dear, just a couple of questions and answers for those of you who like me to ramble on a bit. In the previous broadcast, I mentioned whispers that have been shared by Dickie Eden that the King is going to brandish an idea that was backed by the late Queen Elizabeth, or at least had her blessing, during Trump's first term, actually. And interestingly, it seems that this idea was disbanded during the Biden administration. Perhaps there was a feeling that it wouldn't be warmly welcomed in the same way as it might have been during President Trump's time, but who knows. But the idea is to invite the United States to become an associate member of the Commonwealth of Nations, the 57th member it would be, although all the other 56 existing members are full members of the Commonwealth. This would be actually a novel idea to have an associate membership. I don't, at this point in time, quite understand the reasoning behind it or the purpose of an associate membership, but ideas are being offered and suggested both here and elsewhere as to why this might be. The last 4 countries to join the Commonwealth of Nations, I think, have all been African countries off the top of my head, and they did not have a connection to the British Empire, these particular 4 countries, so you don't have to be a fruit of empire these days to become associated with the Commonwealth. And the Royal Commonwealth Society apparently vouchsafed a missive to Mr. Trump back in 2017 via Nigel Farage, actually. Apparently he hand-delivered it, and I think perhaps he hand-delivered a similar letter to Steve Bannon as well. And it was suggesting that there are imaginative ways to work together upon the establishment of a branch in the United States. Well, Judy Hudson was one of many fruits who gave me a variety of views, all different kinds of views. Judy said, River, if the UK wants Trump and his America as an associate member of the Commonwealth, then Canada will leave the Commonwealth. Read the room. Trump is a fascist and wants to harm Canada. I'm saying this as a Canadian who normally supports the monarch, but that would be a bridge too far for Canada. Well, Judy Hudson, thank you for your very fruity comment. You will not be pleased at all to hear that since I made that broadcast and shared that whisper of Dickie Eden's, President Trump actually confirmed the whispers and confirmed that it is under consideration. He said on Truth Social, I love King Charles, sounds good to me. So there you have it. There you have it from the horse's mouth. This pertains to the idea that with President Trump, one must consider what he does rather than what he says. I know that people who are not fans of President Trump don't like hearing this, but a lot of people will tell you that you have to look past the noise and the braggadociousness and some of the more outrageous vulgarities from the president, and also take a sense of humour into account and look at what he does. People who think that he has a more sophisticated mind than others might think say that you must look for the signal, which we'll come to in a moment. Anyway, there are many conversations behind the scenes, my dears, at the highest level, I've got to tell you. And some of these ideas are years in the forming. We're not privy to these. And sometimes, in order to make a chess piece unobstructedly and unexpectedly move into place, one might need to make noise in one direction while stymieing the flow of chaos in another. This is what you've got to understand, my dears. And Judy Hudson, I would ask you, do you really think that Mr. Trump wants to harm Canada? Maybe he does. At this point in time, I'm not saying one way or the other, but do you really think that he wishes to harm Canada? You might be right, but just for the sake of it? Or does he ultimately want to protect a neighbour and an historical ally of the United States and the Anglosphere? and it's also a country of which his friend, the king, is head of state, of course. And if so, how can he do this? Well, Dickie Eden went on to rightly gloat over the fact that his whispers about this associated membership of the Commonwealth had been confirmed by no less than the president himself. He was enjoying this, understandably, and he imparted a bit more information towards us. He actually revealed that Queen Camilla has had an influential role behind the scenes laying the groundwork for this over several years ago. Apparently, when she was in her role as the Duchess of Cornwall, then the governor of Mississippi of that time, who was a great big Anglophile, loves this country, adores it, and is also a great big friend of President Trump's. His name's Phil Bryant. Apparently he brought his team to Buckingham Palace and they met with Camilla to talk. And I have plenty of American Basketeers, by the way, and they are among some of the most avid fans that you will find of England and the traditions of this land and this country and the kingdom itself and royalty and the royal family. Oh, they are some of the most avid fans in the world, the American Basketeers. It's like a secret club with them all. It's wonderful, really. It's cosy. Well, the talk is that this will be an elegant way to strengthen the ties and the bonds of nations with shared values in the face of encroaching tectonic shifts in the world order that we can all feel, and to potentially ameliorate the tensions that currently exist between the United States and Canada. Well, like some of you, I'm sure, initially, when I heard about this associated membership of the Commonwealth, I thought, well, it doesn't seem like a natural fit to me, and it also seems quite unnecessary. We already have close bonds and ties with the States. We have a special relationship with them, so they call it. We share intelligence and close ties. Why is this extra bond necessary? Why an associate membership? Well, columnist Kevin O'Leary was rather enthused about all of this, and he said that people have been so focused on the bombastic noise that comes out of Trump that they lose sight of the signal. This is what I was referring to earlier. And he advises observers to focus on the signal President Trump is sending out of the formation of an economic union between Canada and the US to counter the growing global influence of tyrants worldwide. Which in a way is reassuring to know that behind the scenes there is a recognition of this and people are talking, do you understand, and making moves in directions to strengthen bonds and ties as the world order shifts tectonically. And the Mail says that in one move Trump could create the world's largest economic engine. An economic engine, this is what the talk's about, one that is dedicated to freedom of speech and democracy. Kevin O'Leary says you've got this behemoth adversarial force in China and Russia and North Korea. And what's the answer to that? Economic union. And he says that it's smart politics by King Charles and a show of respect by Mr. Trump. I remain open-minded. A comment now from Lily Langtry. I referred to Sir Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister on the previous broadcast, and I must have done that a few times. Yes, our Prime Minister. Well, Lily Langtry says, our Prime Minister, River? I didn't vote for him, neither did anyone else I know. They only got in with 34% of the vote, and just over 40% of the electorate couldn't be bothered to go to the polls. He makes my flesh crawl when he buddies up to the king. And he was even more vomit-worthy when constantly touching Donald Trump. He literally makes me shiver when I look at him. There is something not quite right about that expressionless Max Headroom face. I think he is evil. There's nobody home, and not even the lights are on. The entire cabinet is a disgrace. Lily Langtry. Oh, you don't want to cross Lily Langtry, do you? They are turning this country into the cesspit the Tories were already turning it into. What's your position on the current state of play vis-a-vis this government and the opposition? As far as I can see, there isn't a single cabinet member that is qualified, since some of the CVs show great inventiveness but no substance. Well, my dear, thank you very much for your fruity comment. It's appreciated. But as for you questioning me for calling him our Prime Minister and referring to him that way. Well, I didn't vote for him either, my dear, but I have to say that this fashion that has emerged over the last few years, that's where I've noticed it anyway, for saying, not my Prime Minister, not my President, not my King, this sort of thing, I find it rather juvenile and rather petty, my dear, and I don't want it to catch fire here in the kingdom, as I've seen it catch fire in other territories, my dear. You could say, well, he wasn't my pick or not my preference. That's absolutely fine, but he is your PM, whether you like it or not, my dear. He is your prime, if you're based here in the kingdom, he is your Prime Minister. He's my Prime Minister. He's our Prime Minister, my dear. And actually, he's also been my local MP for Holborn and St Pancras. He's also my neighbour. At one time, my literal neighbour. On his doorstep, shared the same local pub. He won an election fair and square. And although I, for one thing, was absolutely disgusted and absolutely revolted that we now have a Prime Minister who took the knee for the likes of BLM, absolutely revolted at that fact. It disgusts me to this day. I still wish him the best of luck making decisions on behalf of our nation and our kingdom. This is a democracy, my dear, and I accept the outcome of the vote. And actually, the Tories needed to be punished for 14 years or whatever it was of managed decline, and for allowing and permitting mass immigration at speed over all of those years, and absolute havoc going on, our culture, our national religion under threat under their watch. So it was necessary to wash them away, however bitter the medicine. Yes, however bitter the medicine. Well, it was at least a year ago, probably over a year ago, my dear, when I first started chatting a little bit about Keir Starmer, in the context of him being a neighbour of mine, to be honest, and I explained that I have many friends who know him, many who work with him. I've rubbed shoulders many times with him and various members of his family. And actually, I'm thinking in particular of one ex-colleague of mine who was a member of his shadow cabinet, who is a baroness. And many of them speak very highly of him, believe it or not. I remember discussing with you how he can be perceived as having a total lack of charisma, and I stand by that. I'm in total agreement with that, especially on public fora. But I also remember telling you that on a personal level and in private conversations, one-on-one, he can be very charming. And I remember saying this to you, and so many of you piped up and said, what have you been drinking? What sort of Kool-Aid are you on with? Keir Starmer, charming? I don't think so. Well, actually, you've been able to see it play out for yourself in his meetings with President Trump this year, and this year in general. He is ingratiating, as you suggest, my dear. He is an operator, but he is really good at it when he puts his mind to it. And I doff my cap and I marvel at it, I've got to tell you. It is a talent and it is a skill. And although there is much to criticise about his tenureship so far, much to criticise, trust me, one has to give credit where it's due. I believe in that. And his audience, if you want to call it that, with President Trump that we saw earlier this year, while taking nothing at face value, by the way, neither Starmer or Trump is a sucker. But having said that, it was a masterclass in the charm offensive. You wouldn't have thought there would be a natural kinship between the two, Our Prime Minister is representing the left wing. Well, I shouldn't say that. He represents all of us, of course, officially, but he is a leftist. But he stroked President Trump's ego. He flattered him. He hand-delivered the invitation on behalf of the King for the second state visit. And I certainly sensed, I don't know if you watched the footage between them, but I certainly sensed that President Trump genuinely liked Mr. Starmer and had been impressed by him, far more impressed than he'd been by other British Prime Ministers, including Conservative ones like Theresa May, for example, who he kind of liked but found very boring. One can totally understand that, my dear. Keir managed to sparkle a bit more and he impressed the President a bit more. Sir Keir has got an awful speaking voice because he, you know, when I do my my little term, I kind of talked a little bit like that, very nasally. And it's rather unfortunate. I think he's been working on it. Some say he's been working on that to some sort of success. But he has always had, and he continues to have, a sort of schoolmistressy vibe. I wouldn't even say schoolmaster, but like a headmistressy matron vibe. Sort of head girlish, you know, behave yourself or I'm going to tell miss, and I'm going to jot down my notes about my little notebook and go back and check that you are applying all the health and safety protocols and procedures. He's that kind, isn't he, my dear, at times? That's the bit that's charmless. As for the opposition, you asked me my thoughts on the opposition, but I'm not going to even go there, by the way, with reform at the moment and all of that calamity. But when it comes to the Conservative Party, their leader, Kemi Badenoch, actually I find there are some parallels between her and J.D. Vance. They both have great promise as leaders, potentially, but there is some immaturity there lurking in the corners, some greenness that Kemi Badenoch is not shaking, and I've got a feeling she's never going to shake it. I'm disappointed to say, because I had some high hopes for her. But if not immaturity, then a sense of the jejune for both Vance and Badenoch. There's something jejune about the gal. I think she would like to give the impression that she is firm and stoic under pressure, but I don't believe it. I think she's actually quite fragile. And actually, even though there have been clips of her sort of flying in Prime Minister's questions in the past, you know, not Prime Minister's questions, just simply in the Commons when she would go up against people, she used to fly and get the better of people with her remarks. She hasn't actually been doing that successfully versus Starmer, and there have been times when he's trounced her. You know, I still yearn, as many of us do, for a stolid and staunch leader who has the boldness of a Thatcher. You know, and that was a very rare thing, by the way. Her boldness was built on deeply thought out spiritual and scientific principles. But as for Keir Starmer, after a messy first 6 months in his role as Prime Minister, where he was scrambling, to be quite honest with you, he went away for New Year. He seemed to come back from the New Year refreshed with a new sort of intention, and he's managed to improve his image somewhat, just slightly, incrementally. He's improved his image a bit. But as for his substance and his policies, well, that question still is very much in the air. I will say he is always hugely respectful to the King and to the royal family. My understanding actually is that they have very enjoyable conversations. This is what I'm saying about his charm one-on-one being greater than he has in the public sphere. He actually makes for more sparkling company for the King than the likes of his first Prime Minister, Liz Truss, in her short tenureship, or the likes of Rishi Sunak. It is Starmer that actually comes across as more sparkling with the King. And by the way, it is not only three Prime Ministers that the King has enjoyed, it's 22, because remember, you have to take into account all of his realms. There have been 22 Prime Ministers that the King has had so far in his short reign. Well, thanks for your questions and for shooting the breeze with me, and I look forward to catching up with you next time, my dears. Take care and toodle pip.